Greetings gamers, my name is Anto and today we're going to be taking a look at what I bring in my GM bag when I'm running games in person. This video is sponsored by Chepeku Maps, more on them later. Now I made a video similar to this back in 2019, but my approach to GMing has changed since then, so I thought it was high time I made an updated version. There are timestamps below to help you jump around and explore the different elements of the bag, and wherever appropriate there's affiliate links to the products I use down in the description, so if you want to pick them up, doing this gives me a small kickback for no extra cost to you. So before we take a look at what's in my bag, I want to talk a little bit about how my philosophy has changed when it comes to the things that I bring in my bag to a session when I'm running in person. Back in 2019, I used to bring books with me, I used to bring quite a lot of stuff with me, and my bag used to be pretty heavy. And after speaking to quite a lot of GMs and talking to them about the things that I bring in my current up-to-date GM bag, I hear a lot from people who say, I can't believe how little you bring. I still feel like I bring a lot, but people will say, I can't believe how little you actually bring. I feel like I have to bring everything I own when I run the game. And if you take one thing away from today, it's that I want you to get more comfortable bringing less to your games, because most of the time, it's gonna be okay. So let's dive into it and get started. Take a look at the bag, beginning with the bag itself. Now this is just a basic messenger bag, a fairly cheap thing that I picked up off Amazon. Nothing fancy. It's got a main compartment and then a couple of pockets. Any bag will work here, but ideally I like to keep a bag that I have specifically to keep all of this stuff in, so I'm not having to go and find it around the house and get it all together come game night. I can just leave it all in this one place, and then when I want to run a session I just grab that bag and go. And then the first thing that I always bring out when I get to the session is this Dungeon Mayhem. This is a fun little fast-paced D&D themed card game. It's a lot of fun and I always bring it with me when I am running sessions, because if I arrive and not all of the players are there, or if we need to kind of get into the mindset of play before we start the session proper, running a couple of rounds of Dungeon Mayhem is a good way to both pass the time while you wait for people and to get people into the game playing spirit and kind of bring them into that fantasy flavored mindset, because you've got all the D&D themed stuff. There's a bunch of cards for different D&D spirited abilities and things like that, so it helps get people into that way of thinking. The next thing that I bring is some form of map. Now I have been using this one, which is the fold out glossy dry erase version that was included in the Pathfinder 1st edition beginner box. I've been using this for like 8-9 years now, something like that. I've been using it for a long time and it serves me perfectly well. It's blank and just kind of textured and gridded on one side, and then on the other side there's this really simple cave system from the adventure that was included in that beginner box, and it folds up really nicely. It travels really well in my bag. I'd love to pick up a much fancier neoprene mat or one of these roll-up mats, but they take up a lot more space. Whereas this is light, it's compact, it fits really well into my bag, and it means that I can take it anywhere. Then to go along with that, I've got this set of standees and tokens. This is a really simple set of little card whiteboard standees with bases and a couple of whiteboard markers, and I use this in addition to what I'm going to show you next to very quickly write up NPCs or quick monsters to show on the grid. We usually play with a grid just because it helps the players visualize where people are in relation to each other. Theatre of the Mind is great, and I do like running Theatre of the Mind, but especially if you've got players who struggle to visualize things mentally, like aphantasia folks, they struggle to understand the relationship and distances between people without some visual aid. So having a map with a grid and some tokens is just a nice visual aid for them to understand where things are and what's happening around them. And this is a great little set just to be able to quickly put down tokens when you don't have something more specific. When I do want something more specific, what I use is in my folder, which contains all of my token standees. These are taken from the Pathfinder 1st edition beginner box and the Pathfinder 2nd edition beginner box. Both of these came with punched card standee tokens and bases, So I've put them into little paper holder sleeves in this binder, along with some other notes, as well as this grid paper in case I ever need to draw a map that won't fit onto my kind of battle map, or if I need to scratch some notes or something, I've got a bit of paper there ready to use. But all of these tokens are what I use for monsters wherever they are appropriate for the monsters that I'm running. And if I don't have an appropriate monster in those token sets, I'll use those blank whiteboard ones. This is really great because they lie flat, they take up very little space compared to the amount of monsters that you can fit into there, and it means that you get a nice visual representation. There's a little bit of art, and it's something a little bit elevated from just those blank whiteboard markers or just a little flat token, and it takes the game up a little bit of a notch with very little effort. The Pathfinder monster boxes are great value, but they sell out immediately. Like, they'll come into stock, sell out, and then you won't see them again for a year. So if you ever see them, especially Bestiary 1, which has got most of your basic monsters in it that you would run for a low-level campaign typically, pick it up if you have the option to, because it has so many options in it. Then moving across the table away from the players and towards myself, we have my GM screen. Now this is the basic 5th edition GM screen, but I've made a bunch of modifications to it. You can see I've taped a whole bunch of things to it. On the front facing the players, I've given them some quick reference options. So on one side, we've got information on what they can do on their turns. So things like their options for attacking, casting spells, all of those kind of things. And then on the other side, it's got a breakdown of what you can do on your turn, how death saving throws work, how resting works, and how cover works. And that's just so that when the players are at the table, they can look at this and they've got a couple quick references for rules on the DM screen. And then on the inside, I've taped a whole bunch of stuff to really customize this screen into the way that I use it. The biggest thing that I've changed is the conditions panel. It takes up so much space, including all of the art and things on that conditions panel, and it wastes a huge amount of the real estate that you have on your DM screen. So what I've done is, instead of having it be a panel and a half, I've condensed it down to half a panel, and instead replaced that space with an NPC builder and a quick monster builder. And those allow me to really quickly, on the fly, build out NPCs and monsters. If my players come into a situation where they meet someone and they want me to describe them and I have nothing prepared, I can just look on the NPC table and build a character out from that. Or if they run into a situation where they are going to fight something I hadn't expected them to fight and I don't have a stat block in mind, I can just pull up the relevant CR and it will give me the baseline stats to get them into a fight and allow me to get the combat going whilst I kind of craft the full stat block on the fly behind the screen. You can pick up all of these DM screen inserts for free from my website. I'll leave a link to that down in the description below as well. If you're looking for high quality fantasy maps for your next D&D or Pathfinder campaign, today's sponsor Cheipeku has you covered. Get your hands on more than 4,000 stunning hand-drawn fantasy maps and D&D battle maps that will take your tabletop role-playing games to the next level. Each Cheipeku map pack comes with tons of variations for things like seasons, time of the day, weather effects, and much more, which means you'll almost always find a version of the map suitable for your game and can even represent the same location at different times of the day or across different time periods. You can use the map browser on the Cheipeku website to look through all the maps, sorting them by tags or map type, and when you're ready, you can head over to their Patreon to get access to more than 4,000 maps ready to put in front of your players for a more immersive experience. Whenever I need a map for my sessions, Cheipeku is the first place I look, and some of the most climactic battles of my entire campaign have been fought on their maps. Not just that, but at the higher tiers you'll get access to fully supported VTT versions of the maps, ready to integrate into Foundry VTT, as well as animated versions of the maps to make them even more immersive for your players. Check out the Cheipeku Patreon using the link in the description, and thanks again to Cheipeku for supporting the channel. And one of my favourite new additions to my GM screen is my dice box. For years, I just had all of my dice in a bag like a goblin, and I would turn up to my session with 100 dice that I would dump out on the table and then sort through for like 15 minutes at the start of the game. And this last Christmas, I got a dice box which organizes everything real nicely, and I've just opened it upside down. That's devastating.
Say that you're fine when you're not really fine, and you just can't get into it because
So this simple little box has just got some space for a bunch of dice options, and I keep like 8 sets of dice in here on the little tray, including my fancy GM dice as well as some color-coded dice. This is something that I started doing when I was running for folks who are brand new to TTRPGs and who had no experience with polyhedral dice. I bought several sets of color-coded dice, so all of the D4s are red, all of the D6s are green, all of the D8s are yellow, etc, etc. So that when I'm running for new players and I say, right, I need you to go ahead and roll a perception check. To do that, roll the 20-sided dice. It's much easier to say, go ahead and roll a perception check. To do that, you need to roll the blue dice and add this number. It's much easier for new players to pass that and to pick it up, and it makes the game just so much more accessible for them. So in this dice box, I've got like 8 sets of dice, which I find to be more than enough. It means that no one needs to bring their own dice, because unless you're playing with dice goblins, they're probably going to forget. And it also includes my absolute favorite dice of all time, the D19. Now this dice is just a simple plain white dice, but it only has 19 sides, and the reason that I love it so much is because it is a great option for if your players become cursed. If you're playing something like 5th edition or any system, any D20 system where a rolling a natural 20 is a critical success or improves your degree of success, cursing someone and then handing them the D19 and saying, there you go, anytime that you would normally roll a D20, you now roll this D19. You cannot crit. Just such a good feeling, and adds a kind of tactile element to their curse. Every time they make a roll, it's a reminder of their curse, and it will incentivize them even more so to go out and fix that curse. I first heard about this on TikTok. I can't remember the creator. I heard about it like a year or more ago, and as soon as I heard it, I was like, I'm getting myself a D19, because that is one of the greatest things I've ever heard. I also keep all of the standees for the card tokens in here as well, in a little Ziploc pouch. The next thing that I like to keep behind the screen and take with me in my DM bag are monster cards. So when I'm running 5th edition, I don't like to bring books with me. I don't want to spend a lot of time sitting at the table looking through books. I just want to make rulings and move right along. And these monster cards are amazing. Not having to bring a monster manual with me, just being able to do my session prep and bring a handful of cards that are relevant to the monsters that are going to appear in the adventure, slims down the amount of stuff that I need to bring, makes it much easier to run them at the table because all the information's on a very small piece of card that doesn't take up much table space behind the screen. And ever since I started using them, I couldn't go back. When I run Pathfinder in person, I print off versions of the cards so that I don't have to bring the Pathfinder books, and it's so much easier than having a book in front of you. And to that end, I have completely gotten rid of bringing any books with me to the table, and I try and go for a purely analog experience. Just in case that isn't possible, I do also bring a tablet with me. This is a Samsung Galaxy tablet, the FE, the cheaper of the Samsung Galaxy tablets. It's a really decent size. It's the FE Plus, so it's like 12 inches in screen size, so it's almost the same size as a typical book. So if I grab a 5th edition book here, you can see that they're almost the same size, which means reading PDFs on this tablet is really nice because you don't really have to zoom in. You get that almost one-to-one size that you get from a book in tablet form factor. It means I don't have to bring 6 books. I can bring one tablet that's got all of my books on it. It also means that at the table I have access to D&D Beyond or Archives of Nethys if I need it. I try not to do too much referencing at the table anymore, but sometimes it's unavoidable and sometimes you need to reference something, so having the option there is really nice. The other thing I really like about this tablet specifically is when the screen is off, if I take the pencil that comes included with it and tap the screen and press the button at the same time, it opens it up and will let me like draw on it, which is really good for taking scratch notes that are cloud synced so I can access them at my computer when I get home and need to update my notes for the game session. It's really useful doing that because most of the time when I'm not running in person, I am a very digital DM. You know, I run using a VTT 9 times out of 10. All of my campaign notes are done digitally in Legend Keeper, so having that cloud functionality to keep everything together is really useful. And then the final thing that I keep in my DM bag is this. This is my GM binder, and this is the heart and soul of the entire kit. If I could only bring one thing with me to run a session, it would be this. Now, I've done a whole video on this, which you can find up here, so I won't go too in depth on that in this video. But essentially, this binder is everything that I need to actually run my sessions, not necessarily a random session, but my sessions is contained in this binder. So inside there is space for me to put cards for monsters that I'm going to use that day. I can put them in the inside cover. I have space for me to keep information about my world. I have a number of pens and stuff all ready to go inside it, so that I don't need to bring anything else with me. I have a mini version of my Pathfinder GM screen inside the binder, as well as lists of conditions and all sorts of information on my party, as well as pricing information, so that I really can run things without any other information when I have just this. I have a little initiative tracker with some plastic in front of it, so I can use dry erase markers to track initiative. I have a paper copy of my calendar, so I can keep track of what the players are doing while they're going through it. And then I have a notes section for me to be able to keep track of the events of the session as we're running it. Like I said, I have a full video on this binder specifically, which you can check out using the link in the description. It's full of really useful information on how to build one of these yourself, and it completely changed the way that I run games at the table. After I put this together, I didn't want to bring books or a laptop or use anything digital at the table anymore. It completely turned me around on being fully analog at the table. So there we have it. That's what I bring in my GM bag when I'm running TTRPGs at the table. I'd love to hear what you include in your bags down in the comments below. Do you have anything that's different to me? Do you think that I've missed anything absolutely essential? Or is there anything that I've included here that you would really like to start incorporating into your own GM kit? Let me know down below. But until next time, happy gaming.